There we go. All right. Good morning, everyone. Happy Friday, July 8th. It is the second half of the year. Welcome to the ITDF all member
There you
meeting
go.
and all Z meeting, bringing you more information here about learning, education formats, another program here that Dr. Simeon Sanders has brought to the ITDF here. I think this is three in a row now. I think with some of the others here. So fantastic. Everybody sees a lot of value in that. So welcome to everybody that can join us live. Welcome to everybody that is recorded. We are going to follow the same format that we've been doing these last couple of months, which is bypass all of our IATDF member information. You know how to get a hold of us. You know how to connect with us. But we want to get right into our welcome guests. And with that, I'm going to turn this over to Simeon to give us a quick overview. And thank you, sir, and introduce your guest.
Thank you so much. And again, thank you, James, and to the IETF board for giving us this format and giving us this platform to do this. I many of you guys know my story. Educator, 20 plus years. My background is online learning and distance education in terms of, with learning technology and learning platforms. I'm never looking for the latest. I'm never looking for the latest and greatest and the next best thing. What I am looking for whenever I'm trying to serve my clients is the right thing. In terms of research, in terms of in terms of data, et cetera, et cetera. And of course, you guys knew with the pandemic, everybody essentially, flourished and dived right into, online teaching, online learning, et cetera, et cetera. And one of the challenges with that kind of ecosystem that we saw is that a lot of platforms that were utilized primarily in business and or higher ed, they pretty much say, hey, we'll open this thing up for K-12 too. So you kind of had a corporate platform that was retrofitted and say, hey, you guys can use this for K-12. Well, just because it was retrofitted doesn't necessarily mean that it was designed for K-12 purposes. And so when I'm looking at things from a teaching and learning perspective, I'm kind of looking at it from the opposite side. How does it look from what should the true teacher and student learning experience look like? So I came across Lessonspace, I want to say about a year, maybe a year and a half ago is how long I've been using it. I propose, I've even put it into a couple of bids and proposals or what have you, simply because of, one of the elements that we're doing right now, which is synchronous communication, whereby we can see one another. There are platforms out there whereby, individuals can't do whiteboarding and video at the same time. And there's something to say about, leveraging various tools, being able to see the learner while I'm actually drawing on the screen. There's something to say when I can actually see their eyebrows that lets me catch their attention. My students and my tutors, they love it. So Kyle and I have been working together for quite a bit now. Because he's in UK, usually I'll throw something out to him and I know I'm not going to hear until midnight or whatever my time when it's daytime for him. So what I've asked Kyle to do is I'm going to let him take the reins and kind of show us through Lessonspace. What I am going to ask Kyle to do is if we could hold off the information on pricing, because there's a special pricing that we discussed and that Lessonspace has kind of put out exclusively for IATDF members. So I know that everyone may not necessarily be an IATDF member, but one of the things that we're always trying to do and that we're always doing is we're listening. We may not necessarily be listening verbally, but we're actually watching the social channels. When Zoom did what it did recently and said, hey, your free stuff is all over now, you only got 40 minutes. Everybody, especially for those that have the capacity and they're serving, just a number of students. How do we service all of our students, without a breaking? I know my tutors, the ones that do utilize Zoom or choose to utilize it, it's not a good student experience where I got to stop after 40 minutes and then sign back in. That's kind of a conundrum. So I'm going to turn this thing over to Kyle. The pricing portion, Guys, it's gonna knock your socks off. We'll send that to you guys. So hopefully Kyle can kind of hold off on that. And if it slips, it's okay. So Kyle, thank you so much for joining me, my friend. Go ahead, take it away, brother.
Perfect. Appreciate that. Thank you so much. Yeah, typically I'd be doing this kind of presentation on Lessonspace itself, but Lessonspace is built to be the best platform for one-on-one and small group. As a result, it really wouldn't work for what we're sitting with 15 people here today. But that's okay. We know what our lane is, and we stay in it, and we're going to do well there. So I'm going to run through basically some of those features. And the great thing is you get to see my perspective as a teacher now as we run through the whole thing. So I'm going to go ahead and screen share. This is my first time screen sharing with Ring Central. And I'm back. Okay. What we are looking at now is my dashboard. And so as an admin or as a teacher, this is what you'll see when you're managing spaces and sessions and stuff like that. As I mentioned earlier, Lessonspace was designed to be the best platform for online and one-on-one tutoring. And as Dr. Sanders mentioned earlier, the Zoom retrofitting, the Ring Central retrofitting, those were all great sort of gap fillers, but none of them were ever purpose-built for education. And that's what we realized back in 2018 when Lessonspace was first created, was that there wasn't really a purpose-built platform, one that, that incorporated pedagogy, one that had teacher-specific tools, one that had subject-specific tools. And so we went about building that. We were originally our own little tutoring company back in 2015, and then started building this platform because we were geographically constrained within South Africa, which is where the company was founded. And so we wanted to break that geographical barrier by creating the online platform. We built it in 2018, 2020, the world ended, the rules changed, and obviously we saw some massive growth. And so from that, we've kept that knowledge from being a tutoring company in our minds the whole time. So our pricing structure is set up because we know tutoring is like cyclical. No one here is working their busiest month right now. It's even in the UK at the moment, everyone's quiet. But we also know that April, May, things are crazy. And you don't want to have massive overheads for the slow months, or make sure that everything fits according to the way that's running. And that's where I'm going to stop in pricing. Dr. Sanders asked me to stop. So to focus on that, I'm going to go through a couple of demos, just show you some of the subject-specific tools, some of the teaching-specific tools, give you an idea of why this is so great for teaching. I'm just going to take my notes from earlier.
Kyle, can you tell me what the difference is between spaces and sessions?
Right. So sessions in this context of what we're viewing here is just basically a list of the previous classes that I've had. So here's a meeting that I had, was it yesterday? Here's a meeting I had earlier in the week. So these would be me, the teacher, and these, the student. And then you'd be able to view the recording or, do specific things. So one of the most powerful parts about Lessonspace is that our spaces are persistent, right? So if I were to go search for my previous meeting, hopefully I didn't discuss any pricing matches in that. You can actually see the notes that we had from our very first meeting, or one of our very first meetings we'll get the date now. Hi. There we go, the 19th of April, 2022. So you can see the notes are still here, they're still present, and I can go back in and create, a new whiteboard and interact with that. So what a lot of our clients find success with is having the same space for every tutor-student pairing. So that every time a tutor and a student get back together again, they can review the previous work because it's on a different tab, or they can go over some of the homework from 3 months ago because it's still there and it remains there perpetually. From there, myself, I'm a math tutor. Every Tuesday afternoon, I teach math just to make sure that I constantly know what the end user experience is. And so one of the tools that I use a lot is the formula tool. Should I do like a basic formula quickly here? Just because my handwriting is really, really bad. So if I were to try and take what I've just added here as a formula and maybe write it, you can see that it's not going to be that legible. So I rely on the formula tool as well as the graphing tool quite heavily. And these are just straight off some of the things that you can see that are very, very clear subject-specific tools. So let's insert that there. So there I've just added sine of x. And I can interact with this and shift graph up and down as I need. A couple of these things are getting upgraded as well, which is great. The new graphing tools coming out, we're constantly developing and building and learning because we want to make sure that we stay the best. And so we want to make sure that all of our tools are pedagogically sound, that are based on the latest research. No one's sitting here being like, oh, I'm a visual learner, I'm an audio learner. We know that's been debunked. So we make sure that the education tools that we've got fit the latest research. Beyond that, mentioned the Zoom changes that have happened, obviously. So we are seeing a massive influx of people coming from Zoom because the 40-minute changes happened. So we've managed to get a lot of feature parity with Zoom. I think it's been a large push of what we've done over the last 3 months, is to make sure that, hey, if you're coming from Zoom, all the things you like about Zoom and their whiteboard, and all the different features you can get from there, you can get here. Recording is seamless. We've just, I think next week we're releasing the ability to annotate while screen sharing. So on the screen share, I can draw around and stuff like that. A lot of those features are coming out so that there isn't that much inertia moving from the one system to another. At least there's familiarity. Lessonspace was built to be the pen and paper of the internet. You don't need an instruction manual to use pen and paper. So we want to make this as pick up and play as possible. There's a pen, there's paper, we know what we're doing. Beyond that, you can add extra things like certain kids with autism really struggle with really bright whiteboards. We have things for that. Other learning disabilities we counter for, and we set up different things to be able to make it as easy and as possible for students to learn. I want to say we make learning easier, but we don't. Everyone here knows that learning needs to be inherently difficult, otherwise you don't learn. What we are doing is making teaching easier, and making teaching as easy as possible. Are there any questions I could break into before I go into sort of the organizational structure?
Kyle, let's do the organizational structure, and what we'll try to do is we'll kind of save the questions because folks are starting to type in questions in the chat. So what we can do is towards the end, after you've gone through everything, is we can go through that list of questions, and you can kind of just rapid fire your response to each of them. Fair enough?
Fantastic. That sounds great. Okay, so the first organizational piece that I want to look at is, let's say you are now the admin of the organization and you're trying to manage all your different tutors, all the different curriculums you offer. One of the quick ways to do that is to use the resource drawer. It's really great that you get to see from my perspective. So this is a little button I pushed here, and as you can see, I've got preloaded resources for pretty much any level I need, and they can be grouped up. So if I wanted to bring in some really complex stuff or maybe some really simple stuff, I literally just click and drag. And this can be organized and arranged from within a space, but it can also be done from your library tab in your dashboard. So you can do it outside of a space as well. You can set it up for your personal file as well as on an organization level. And this is really, really powerful because if I take that as well as the ability to export and import entire spaces, I end up with a feature like this. So if I close that down and I go, let's actually open up the resource drawer. Let's do that. And I just hit that button there. I'm actually loading up an entire space. Now, in this case, the space is my demo space, but it shows you very quickly how we can have the entire space set up, ready to go, the entire lesson, the entire year's curriculum set up and ready to load up with a button. So now I'm going to show you some of the different features. Say, for instance, our single page. So this is viewable in the same way you would view a PDF on Adobe, and it still maintains its interactivity. And then maybe some cool features is the ability to like move things into the right area. Okay, that's definitely not a fruit and vegetable. And so there's these kind of things. A document tab works very much the same as your Google Docs. It's completely interactive. If you were on this space with me now, you'd be able to make notes. In fact, I think, Dr. Sanders, you made some notes over here during our first meeting. Formulas and graphs we've gone through. Because the spaces are persistent, you can let your students jump on and do homework. This is very powerful because spaces with only one participant, i.e. a tutor setting up a class or a student doing homework, is free of charge. You don't pay for that. So that asynchronous aspect is completely free and therefore very valuable to a lot of different clients for a lot of different reasons. Lines I mentioned, we have a coding tab. So I said Lessonspace is the best way to teach online. I believe this coding tab is the best way to teach. I don't know of a better way to teach coding because this is also collaborative. So you have the ability for a student and a coding teacher to sit down and code together, and it's a complete IDE. I mean, if I start to delete this, you can see how the colors change. So you have the ability, like any IDE across, I think, 15 languages? to code together, which is really, really powerful. We've seen a big uptake in music as of late. So if you do have music tutors, one of the powerful things we're bringing across now is second camera support. That should be coming in the next week or so. That means a music teacher can have one camera at their face and one at their instrument. And then we're looking at integrating a whole bunch of other different tools, like an applet that plays the music at like a speed, and you can get that set up. It's quite cool. The Blackboard, from sort of anyone who's watched math tutorials on YouTube, that's obviously very powerful for physics. The grids I mentioned, and then just loading and managing PDFs is very, very simple. Okay, back to the organization. From the library, we've managed to upload and change the curriculum. From the spaces, we can here manage all the different tutor-student pairing spaces. So if I were to call this one, let's say let's create a new one, and let's say who we're going to pick on, Byron. But Byron, and Byron's student's name is Adam. And Byron, what do you teach? Yeah, you muted, unfortunately. Sorry for picking on you. Let me see where chat is.
German.
Fantastic. Okay, great. We'll say this is German 101. And I've enabled recording of audio and video on this, and create the space as easy as that. The space is created, it'll be persistent. Byron, your German class will be there forever. And so with this link, you're able to share it. There are integration partners, LMSs that you can use that integrate directly with us to run this whole thing automatically if you'd like. So those you can check out on our integrations page. Let's go take a look at where that is. There you go. And we have a whole bunch of integration partners here. Some of them you will be familiar with in terms of managing classes and times and stuff like that. Recording is quite an often a mentioned feature. So from here, I could just hit the review recording button. Obviously, I'm not going to review any of these recordings because these are different meetings. But the really interesting part about the way we do recordings is they're not flat MP4 files. They maintain a lot of the features that you see within Lessonspace. One of the things we're bringing back is interactivity. And this is a really powerful tool because it allows students to basically have the same lesson twice. Now, when I say interactivity with a recording, what do I mean? I mean, in the same way that you have a space, a student could watch the recording of that space. After the teacher asks a question, they could pause and try and answer that question on the space the same way, like type it in or tick the correct box or something like that, and then hit play and watch the teacher answer that question, which drastically increases the power and the value of the lessons they're having, because if a student doesn't get it, they can just go back and do it again. And I think that covers it for a lot of the organization level things. Obviously, you can manage your teachers and your students from here as well. And your teachers and your students get a view of the dashboard, their own dashboard. It just obviously doesn't have the sessions that they're not part of, the spaces that they're not assigned to, and none of like the billing stuff. Okay, now let's get into some questions.
So yeah, question number one. I'll do two of the questions, Kyle, and I'll kind of make one of them a little bit broader, if you will. And then we'll open it up to the group. You guys can come off mute and just kind of jump in. One of the questions was, as it relates to something like Google Meets. So when we think in a platform like Google Meets, when I joined Tutor Doctor, one of the big platforms that was, kind of pushed out there was Bramble. And I think you're also familiar with Bramble. It is not, I'm not one to shy away from it. It's not one of my favorites, simply because there's just a lot of pedagogical pieces from a teaching and learning perspective that are completely missing. Certainly the synchronous, the ability to see one and communicate with one, at the same time, that to me, that's a challenge, especially in the K-12 arena. So when we think of a user, one of the things folks say, well, hey, we'll just use Google Meets or we'll use Microsoft Teams. In your experience, or just from your perspective, short of the pedagogy, how is it different? How is Lessonspace? How would you say Lessonspace is different?
So Bramble is a great comparison and a great question to ask. Thank you so much. So with Bramble and Meets and stuff like that, I see someone also mentioned earlier that you are able to see the video feed while you're working on the whiteboard. Beyond that, there's quite a few controls that we have as teachers, which make it a very strong teaching tool. We have a thing here called leading mode. So that's this little crown that you see on my face over here. And that means any students that are on the platform with me, they follow the view that I follow. So if I'm looking at the homework tab, they come with me to the homework tab. If I go to the whiteboard and I zoom all the way out or all the way in, they zoom all the way out or all the way in. And that's just, one of those things to make sure the teacher has control of what the students are doing and seeing. The teacher has the ability to turn leading mode off, and then the students can go crazy. A lot of times what they'll do then is they'll assign specific tabs to specific students if they have more than one in a session, and then allow them to go work on their tabs individually. But things like that, like we kept the idea of the student and tutor relationship and what a teacher needs to do to be able to give a class effectively. And we have those tools in place, which a lot of other places like Meets or Bramble or Zoom don't have.
Gotcha. Another question. I'll get to those. Another question is there a capability for, and honestly, this kind of gets into kind of how we might structure this. And Kyle and I, honestly, for the question that's kind of placed on this, is there a way for multiple tutors? So what you're seeing here is every person that's on here is an individual business owner. He or she is an individual tutor, doctor, business owner in their territory. But sometimes, folks want to be able to share content, share documents. So short of having kind of this conglomerate Google Drive, the question is, and I say conglomerate Google Drive, is there a way that with each individual office, because everybody might subscribe to Lessonspace differently, one person might choose this subscription differently from the other person, is there a way for tutors to share resources, kind of like a library? Again, I think that kind of gets into how this might be structured. From single user versus we kind of have one universal and they kind of have multiple users. So is that something even a possibility?
It is possible, but you may have to lean on a third party in that case.
Yeah.
I speak simply because once we break out of a Lessonspace organization or an account, we don't have much control from there. So within the account, within the library, you can have your organization, you can have your personal. But as you said, different people, different plans. That means different accounts. What we do have is a lot of tools that allow the transfer from one account to another to be quite quick. If you want to sort of transfer students or teachers, you can export the entire list with a CSV. I'm sure I'll find the button somewhere. You can see you can export data quite quickly as a CSV and then import it onto the other side. Things like exporting and importing spaces, I can import the entire space as it's been set up and then export it as a zip file, share that zip file, someone else can import it on their side. And that makes it very easy to be able to share the content across.
Gotcha. Another question comes across. Another question, Byron, I want to see if I can answer the question a little bit differently. I know what you're asking. How are spaces different from sessions? So if you can go back there, Kyle. So I'll kind of share with you how I view it, and Kyle can certainly correct me if I'm wrong. Spaces, if I am the principal, let's say I'm the principal of a school, my spaces are my classrooms. That's essentially what that is. Spaces are my classrooms. The space is where the class is going to take place. The only difference is in one-on-one tutoring, every individual student has his or her space. And in some cases, you might consider a space to be a room. In Bramble, I think we might call it a room. The sessions, that is what actually takes place in the classroom, or that's what actually takes place in the room. So if Simeon and Byron, if I'm the teacher and you're the student, I might call it Byron's German space. Every time Byron comes into his tutoring session, every single Tuesday at 5:00 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, you're going to always click on that link, and that's going to bring you into your personal room. Each session that we do every Tuesday at 5 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time is recorded and it is saved within your room. So anytime you want to go back into your room, into your closet, into your classroom to look at any of the previous sessions that have taken place, you have that capability of doing it. So your space is your classroom or your room. It is your personal space, but the sessions, that is what is taking place within inside of that space. Does that help? Does that help? Perfect. Oh man, they're firing away.
Simeon, can I just jump in real quick, just because it's on this particular topic?
Yep.
Say we were doing an SAT class with 5 students.
Yep.
Then what would that similar analogy be? Would that be under the space? And each of those is a session under that space?
That would be that space. That would be that, unless Kyle tells me different. If I'm doing a small group session, 5 or 6 students, then I essentially have a space that's called Chris's SAT, Saturday 9 o'clock session. I've got 5 students enrolled into or assigned to that space. Kyle, can you do me a favor, please? Can you go out to, come back here and go to a space and do me a favor really quick. Kyle is going to love this. Hit those 3 dots for me, Kyle, on Byron's, and we're going to assign the space. So what I'm going to do, Chris, is I'm going to assign this space to as many teachers as I want. So I might have 1 tutor doing math, 1 tutor doing SAT English. Then I'm going to assign all 5 students, the 5 or 6 students. So those 5 or 6, again, this is still the room. All of the sessions that occur every Saturday at 9 o'clock Central or whatever time, Pacific time, they are all recorded in that space. At any given moment, any of the 5 or 6 students that I have assigned to this space, any one of those individuals can come back into their space and review any of the previous SAT or ACT sessions that have been conducted.
Simeon, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Simeon, can I ask something that's along the line there? I put it in the chat there, but how does access work for the students and the tutor? Are there login credentials created for everyone? Is it just via a web link?
So that's set up on a case-by-case basis, depending on how exactly you want to run it. So typically, we want to make sure that there's as little in the way of the student joining the space as possible. Yeah. Typically, you click the link, you're in. Like, there's no downloading, there's no nothing. However, if you have security or privacy concerns, you can force a login with an email or something like that as well.
I take that. I grab, kind of like I do with Mindprint, in all honesty. James, what I do is I come in, again, I hit those 3 dots. I look at, when I actually grab on that space, I actually grab the URL for that. And I'll do a short URL, like a bit.ly, so I'll do a bit.ly/Byron Z. And I'll email that to the parent or what have you, tell them save that as a shortcut. And that way, anytime the student, when it's time for the session to start, hit that little session in your favorite doohickeys in your browser or what have you, and you're there. That's the way that I do it.
So, if I may,
go for it.
Simeon, what you're saying is we could have one space that would be, I don't think I need this, but I can see in the States, a space with, say, 2 or 3 tutors and 5 students, and you'd have an English SAT and a math SAT, and they would use that. All of the students would use that same space every session, and one tutor or the other would use that same space.
That is, and that, again, that's an organization, because you are your own organization, Blake. That's complete. That's the design that I just created. But if you say, hey, Chris is the SAT English tutor, and, Chris can't stand mathematics. So you know what, Simeon, you say, hey, my 2 tutors don't want to share the space. Essentially I can have SAT English over here, SAT Math over here, assign an individual tutor, but it's still, again, I can assign the students to this space as well as assign the students to this space. But if I just want to do, if I'm just, if I got the same tutor doing whatever, or multiple tutors doing whatever, again, you get flexibility. So there's really not, it has to be done this way. You get a lot of flexibility to kind of design it how you want it to, how to structure it the way that you want to do, the way you want to go.
Is there a hierarchy about who can open the space for work? Like, does one of the
At the
tutors
moment,
have to be there to?
no.
No. Okay.
So at the moment, I think tutors have the ability to open spaces, which allows them the ability to create the space, at a whim if needed for a student, especially if they want to move from an old space that's cluttered or, it's a bit busy. With the Lessonspace account, you have unlimited spaces. There's no storage or like worries or anything like that. So typically, clients would favor, a new space, a fresh new space, because it's a little bit easier to manage.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Let me see. Let me go back. There was a comment about a free component. I can't recall what you mentioned, Kyle. So the question is, can Kyle restate that, please?
If I remember correctly, that was regarding recording and the fact that storage is free.
I thought you were talking about if it was I thought I heard if it was a single tutor and a single student. There was some.
Right. Yeah. Sorry. A space is only charged for or classified as billable time when the second participant joins. So if there's only one person in a space, they're busy setting up the space as a tutor. They know they've got a big class coming up. They're not charged for taking the time sitting there, making sure the class looks perfect. And then as soon as the student joins, well, now that's teaching time. And teaching time then qualifies as billable time. And then when the tutor leaves or the session ends and the student wants to do homework later, they can come and they can take their time with the homework. There's no charge for the student sitting there by themselves. The reason for that is obviously from our cost perspective, we pay for the data transfer across. So there's no point in us charging you for time that we aren't being charged for.
The question, can the student or library contents, Chris, you might have to help me clarify. Can the student or library content sharing be from one tutor doctor office to another or only within one? So I'm assuming, Chris, let me paraphrase. If I've got a kid who's in Maryland, we've tutored them, and my tutor and this kid is getting ready to move to California. So am I understanding that you'd like me and they're going to come in and they're going to work under your office? Hey, Chris, my client is moving into your territory. Can you take them on? Chris goes, hell yeah, I'll take them on. Some of y'all, guess what? We use Lessonspace too. Is there any way you can send me from your Lessonspace to mine? Am I hearing that right, Chris? Do I understand that right?
That would be a parallel and secondary scenario. I was thinking more simply, let's say you have a chemistry periodic table, or you created a list of trigonometric identities, and like, oh wow, and it just came, as we were talking in passing or something. That could there be, instead of having this very manual, send from one to another, is there a place where tutor doctor offices, think of like an overarching organizational umbrella? Could we just post stuff up there? Kind of back to what you were saying earlier, like in essence, like a Google Drive or something, right? But it would live within this platform, not having to use other software tools to make that transfer.
If to answer the parallel first, you would just export. If you're transferring students, you would just export the space and send it across. But at the moment, no. In terms of the overarching structure, the use case that we're dealing with here with the IATDF is very unique. It's not often that we have multiple organizations that have this overarching structure like you guys do. So no, we don't have the capacity at the moment.
Chris, if we were and honestly, when I brought this to Lessonspace and just kind of design, because I think that's one of the things we always run into. Everybody kind of does things a little different. And so certainly if we were to structure this under, let's say IATDF was one organization, and then we kind of put everybody under that organization, then it is possible because IATDF is the parent organization. The problem with that is now you get into a pricing challenge. I'm just going to flat out say it becomes cost prohibitive to a certain degree, because then you've got Ben who says, well, I don't want to pay that much money, and I only want to use Lessonspace with one kid. I'm not going to be using it with 75 kids the way that Chris is using it, and 10. So what we tried to look for was flexibility, so that each person can kind of have his or her own organization and manage it accordingly.
Right. No, and I understand that. And Kyle, I guess this is, if you think about Rev 2.0 or Rev 3.0 in the future, it's much more of a collaboration thing than it is an organization thing. So, if you happen to have users, or like if you guys had a power library somewhere, like, hey, here's some great things that have been, curated through the net, just something where, basic stuff like that could, just for what it's worth, that might be like a good, 2.0, 3.0 thing for the future.
Yep. Yep. Hey,
Perfect.
interesting question. Jamie, feel free to come off mute and help us. Is the ability to view the instructor-student video persistent across all of the tabs, such as a small window with video rolling at all times, like we have here on this meeting, or can you only see each other if you both selected the tab for sharing video?
So video is persistent across all tabs, as you can see
Okay.
here.
Okay. So you just turned it turned it off so you didn't get an infinite loop, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
Well,
Perfect.
also
Thank you.
my face is really big on the screen, so it's kind of distracting.
All right. Thank you.
This is a really good one. I like this. Byron is asking, is there a way to limit the use of this platform so that only tutors can use it with students that he works with? So if Kyle is my tutor and Kyle, under my office, Kyle, you're an independent contractor. You're not an employee. So you get to tutor for whomever, every tutor in the organization you choose to, as well as tutor people on your own. Can you use Lessonspace on your own with any of your folks, or can I restrict it so that you don't have that ability?
You weren't lying. That is a fantastic question. Dankeschön. Very, very well done. So yeah, actually that is a feature or a permissions update that is coming out very, very soon. It's actually in the final stages of testing at the moment to be able to prevent tutors within your organization sort of having the ability to create spaces. Yeah. Well, to have the option to switch that on and off if you want to, because some people need that, some people don't.
Okay. Jessica, I don't think there is. Is there a limit on how many spaces can be created?
No, in fact, we encourage you to create as many spaces as possible, because the more spaces means the more lessons, the better you do, the better we do.
Thinking out loud, can we create a space for all Z's to access and have our subject matter experts create our training seminars that we've been discussing? Could this platform support that?
Sorry, I'm just going to try and understand that quickly. So
Could
disease, as far as I
this
understand,
platform act as an LMS, a learning management system, where unique users could access the space and upload? For example, Simeon has real good information on how to do a Google form, and he could access the space, create a 3 to 5 minute video on how to do that with all of your technology, recordings, video, all of that, and then have that as a repository in a space titled How to Create a Google Form.
very interesting use case. I like the way you're thinking, because that obviously takes the space and levels it up again, because now you're using the space to sort of manage what we're working with here. Yes, that is possible for most cases. The video becomes a bit tricky because the video capacity within Lessonspace is limited to the screen sharing at the moment, just because to make video work consistently on so many different browsers does get dangerous sometimes. And with Safari changing every other day, it doesn't match the quality standards that Lessonspace sets right now. So that would probably be limited to the synchronous side of things. But your question actually does lead into a very interesting thing. In the next, I think towards the end of the next quarter, we're developing infrastructure to be able to do asynchronous things. So for instance, you take a space, you screen record your session, you then teach a lesson to no one in particular. You're not running any billable time, so that's free. And then within Lessonspace, we're going to create the facility to be able to take that recording or to take that content and to be able to share it on YouTube or into your Google Drive or something like that. So you have this asynchronous aspect of Lessonspace that becomes very powerful to use. And from our perspective, we're obviously sharing Lessonspace a bit more. So that's why we're doing it.
Cool. Is there a log for, I think I got this. Brendan, I'm going to come back to the separate instance cost, by the way. Is there a log for sessions so we can use that to confirm a tutor's time in session?
Yes. Okay, so the original answer to that is not without the API. So the API is obviously the very involved developer aspect of it. So if you wanted to pull Lessonspace apart like a toolbox, the API would be that toolbox. At the moment, though, again, we are looking at getting exact join and leave times. So at the moment, your session only tells you when the session started and when the session ended. That does give you pretty comprehensive timing as to, you know, when people were there. But we are getting individual joining and leave times added onto the session log soon as well.
Okay. Let's see. Oh, no, Jessica, we hadn't talked about any type of billing, or we hadn't talked about any billing or anything along those lines. I'll tell you
Sorry,
what.
Simeon, if I could just go back quickly to that previous question.
Go ahead.
There is the ability to go onto each tutor's individual account, as I've done now here, and see what their hours versus billable hours is, and for a specific period of time. So you can get that information very accurately there.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Yep. So Kyle, I'll tell you what, I know we're not, I really didn't want to, you know, I really didn't want to go down the rabbit hole of pricing.
I'm loving this.
But I think it would be cool to show, you know, one, what the packages are. Again, I don't want to get into the nooks and crannies of pricing, but just so everybody can kind of see, you know, kind of where you can go with this. And again, it's not a hit or miss. I believe they're going to be like maybe 3 tiers to this that you can choose from. So could we use the main pricing? Yeah. Can we just use this and we won't get into the discount or anything? So this is how this is done, if you will. Go for it.
Fantastic. Yeah. So again, as we said, we won't speak about the specific discount. But there is one, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. So for the starter package, you're looking at $29 a month, and that includes the first 30 hours. And so, you know, first 30 hours are $1 per hour, roughly, or just under. And then from there, your 31st hour and above will be $1.80. You can ignore this storage recording. We typically find that only when you get to about 10,000 hours a month are you really hitting those marks. And that's when the storage costs become a thing. So let us help you get there as quickly as possible. But until you get there, don't worry about the storage. The most common plan typically is the Pro plan, because the starter plan does not include recording. The Pro plan does. And that is the first 100 hours for $99. And then every dollar from there on out, every hour from there is $1.20. And that's typically the most common use case for a monthly basis.
Okay.
Okay. And then from the advanced package, the first 300 hours are included. Then it's 67 cents. Once you reach 1,000 hours, the price drops down to 60. After 3,000 hours in a month, it drops down to 55, 50, 45. I think it eventually tends to about 22 cents per hour at like 100,000 hours a month.
So, Kyle, let me ask a question, because I think I'm seeing a couple of things, and I'm going to ask Blair and Brendan to, you know, again, feel free, guys, to jump in. So to make sure that we understand the billable time. So the first 100 hours, if you will, for 100 hours of tutoring, 1 hour, what is the hour is only considered if, as I understand it, only when 2 or more are actually in that session. So if the teacher logs in and it's just the teacher at 10 o'clock at night, and from 10 to 1 in the morning, I'm prepping and I'm planning in the space. That's 3 hours. If I understand it correctly, I'm not being billed for that time. That time is not being counted into my 100. It's only when I actually conduct a session between a tutor and a student, when both individuals are a part of the space. Conversely, if the students are in the session, if the students are just reviewing it, hey, I'm joining my space. You know, my teacher asked me to join my space. You know, I tell you what, I'm going to log in at 3 o'clock. I know the session ain't until 6 o'clock, but I'm going to click on the link anyway at 3 o'clock. From 3 to 6, that's still 3 hours. I'm not billed for that time until the teacher comes and joins the session at 6 o'clock. Is that a correct understanding?
Correct. Yeah. Just on that, there is a 25-minute idle time. After 25 minutes of being idle, the session automatically ends. But that is correct. If you can look here on my account, you can see my all hours for the last, so since about the 8th of June to today, is 26 hours and 14 minutes. However, once I click billable hours, you're going to see that's very different, because I spend a lot of my time working on spaces, creating working in different things. So that difference there tells you exactly, like, of the 26 hours I've been on Lessonspace, I would only typically be billed for 9.5.
Gotcha.
And Kyle, just to clarify, now that would be on a tutor by tutor basis, that traceability of billable versus total hours, correct?
Yeah, so then you would go through your teacher's specific accounts like this, and then be able to see exactly their all hours versus billable hours. Yeah.
So then that would aid us as we try to figure out, paper prep time, or, if that's applicable versus student session time. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. So right here, you'll be able to see the exact billable time that they spent, and if they've got another person in the space with them, they are teaching, or they're having a friendly chat or something, but that is teaching time, and you'd be able to see that very comprehensively here.
Hey, Jessica has a really good question. Jess?
Yay.
Yeah. So what if we had a space with a class and there were 5 students in there? Would we be billed for the time in the space or for 5 different students' time?
On these pricing plans mentioned here, you would just be billed for the time in the space. There is at the per participant millet billing situation over here. That's typically from 1,000 hours a month and above. You have the ability to drop the cost quite substantially, but then yes, you pay for every connection. However, on the plans that we're looking at now, and for the IATDF specific plans, as long as the average for fair usage, the average number of participants in a session is under 5, that isn't a problem at all. And then when it's over 5, it's not like we immediately start billing you. We just open a discussion and then we start to figure out what works.
Okay. So one of the things, everybody, that I'm certainly thinking, again, I see comments that says, hey, this might be a little too pricey for Canadian Z's or what have you. Again, you're looking at, these are the out of the box rates. James, do you want me to tell them what the discount is?
Well, you brought me all the way to the end, and you're going to leave me hanging on a Friday. I mean, you might as well.
So here's what IATDF negotiated with Lessonspace: 50% off. So essentially, instead of $99, you'll be looking at, if I'm not mistaken, that 99, cut that in half, $199. You guys will cut that in half. That's essentially what we will be looking at. What is not presented right here is there will be a coupon code that we will provide only to IATDF members. So again, we're always looking to try to bring benefits. We saw things that says, hey, this Zoom thing is no longer scalable. We got lots of, you might have one person, who does quite a bit of tutoring, where the advanced, one on the far right makes more sense, versus the one in the middle. The one in the middle is the one that I use, simply because the recording feature is, for me, it's very important. One of the other things that I like about this, again, that Jessica mentioned, that we talked about, the number of spaces, it doesn't matter. I'm not paying $49.50 per tutor. If I've got 10, 15, 20, 30, if I've got 100, I do not have 100 tutors. I wish. If I had that, then great. But it's not. I'm not like the Zoom accounts where I'm paying, kind of, per person, if you will. And I'm only paying for the time that I'm actually utilizing, that's actually taking place, in the session. So this is the discount that Lessonspace, you saw some of the notes that Kyle had earlier. Don't show those. Kyle and I jumped on the phone and I said, here's the case. And one of the things I love about Lessonspace, James, I think you kind of heard it a little bit, where Kyle goes, hey, that's an interesting use case. Lessonspace may not have the answer right then and there, but I can tell you this from experience. They're going to take it and they're going to chew on it for a couple of days, maybe 2 or 3. Because if it's something that they haven't been presented with, they'll take it and they'll say, how can we make this work? So where I see this going from here, I don't believe, again, for those of you that are genuinely interested, unless Kyle tells me otherwise, I'm pretty much going to connect you with Kyle. I'm not a salesperson of Lessonspace, but I believe in the platform. I believe in the pedagogical aspects of the platform. So, I would just direct, maybe Kyle towards the end, he provides you with his email address and phone numbers, and you guys can get in touch with them. And again, if you're an IATDF member, then you reach out to James or myself or Jessica, one of the board members. We'll give you the code respectively so that you can take advantage of the benefit. That being said, I am done. You guys, open floor. Ben, Brendan, go for it,
Real
brother.
quick. Yeah. Real quick, just to make sure I understand, and I think this is right. So the hours pretty much equate to delivered hours, right?
Effectively, that's why we set it up that way.
Effectively, that's what it is. I imagine that, as somebody like myself is growing, maybe one plan fits, we could upgrade at some point. If we started getting into that, maybe 150, 200 hours delivered, we could change that plan at some point in time, correct?
And downgrade as well, because we know that there are some quiet months. So you can move up and down as needed.
What's the timing on doing that? I imagine there's some kind of a window.
Upgrading is instant. Downgrading is about 30 days.
Okay.
Yep.
There was a really good question from somebody named IATDF board who may or may not be wearing a green t-shirt. He was asking whether multiple sessions can occur simultaneously, or if it's just one, per one at a time.
Yeah, I saw that question earlier, and I just checked quickly. One of our accounts is running 100 sessions right now. We really encourage as many concurrent sessions as possible, because that means, again, that you're doing well, and if you do well, we do well.
Anything from anybody else? I know it's probably at this point 11 o'clock p.m. your time, Kyle. So
I got one
Brendan,
more.
Go ahead, brother.
So I, with others, probably have found this out too, seeing as that we have a Canadian home office and some Canadian vendors. The billing of this, would that incur international fees because it's coming from South Africa, or?
Our company's registered in Delaware.
Oh, got it. There you go.
Perfect. Then just before we leave, I do want to ask if everyone could just go ahead and create an account. You get a 14-day free trial with your account. And don't worry, you don't need any credit card details for that. Go ahead, try it out. You'll get automatic mails from me, so you can just respond to those mails, and you'll be in direct comms with me. If you want me to extend the trial because you're not quite sure yet, I'm happy to do so. But just go ahead and follow that link that I just shared there.
Follow that link, Jess. Everybody grab that link right now from Kyle. Grab it, grab it, grab it.
Okay, so question 2, is there a video tutorial for our tutors how to use this? And 2, is there a marketing video or something like that that we can use to blow Bramble out of the water?
Marketing video, I don't have anything for you right now. However, in terms of crossing the inertia, I said Lessonspace is the pen and paper. You don't need an instruction manual to use pen and paper. Here's the instruction manual. All these videos are under Creative Commons license. If you don't like the South African accents that are in them, by all means, download them, dub over them, edit them as you need. However you want to work with them, you are more than welcome to, but I'll make sure to share this. In fact, I'll share it right now in the chat.
Hey, Byron, you could create a video tutoring me in like 3rd grade math or something. And
so let's see. Great question from Jamie. I want to answer a portion of this, Jamie, if I can, and then I'll let Kyle. When a student has a homework assignment, how easy is it for the student to get a snapshot of the assignment into their space so they can work on it with their tutor? I can tell you number one, that's very easy. I've tutored a couple of students when I couldn't get a tutor or what have you. It's super easy. The second portion of this question, this one is a challenge. Can it be done from a mobile phone? The short answer is yes. I've actually done this with a student with a mobile phone. I've actually done it with a tutor in terms of working with the tutor via mobile phone. Is it the ideal experience? I'm going to say whether it's Bramble, Zoom, you name it. Coming from a content provider company, I used to work for Houghton Mifflin Harcourt. We did one of the top 3 publishers in the world. And at the time when everybody was really big on putting content, making content accessible to multiple platforms because of the BYOD initiatives that students were doing all across, if you will, everybody was in such a rush to have textbooks and their workbooks and all of this stuff on a mobile device. So when you think of a mobile device that has a 4.7 screen, now you're starting to get really into ergonomic. Is it readable? Can I truly interact with it? So the short answer is yes, you can do it. Is it the ideal experience? With a couple of the clients that I've worked with, and they were like, maybe they had eye problems. I don't know, for whatever reason. Because when you start putting like images, like Kyle did, when you start putting like sign graphs and all other kind of stuff, the resolution and how that appears on a mobile device might be a little bit challenging. So I would ask the student, why are you on your device and you got a laptop? They go, well, I don't feel like turning on my laptop right now. And in Baltimore County, every student has a laptop device because the school provided it, so I think that's, can it be done on a mobile device? Yes. I've even done the writing. I've done it all for the most part. But again, is it the optimal experience? That's the question.
And then the nature of that question, Simeon's slightly different. It's using your mobile device to get a screenshot of that assignment into the workspace. That's what I'm talking about. Because with Bramble, what you do is you go and you basically just go to your workspace and then on your phone, and then you can snap that picture there. So, because that's a really common use case, at least for my tutors that are on Bramble, is students got the homework assignment. How do I get it into the workspace to work on it? So, okay, yeah. So that's using the computer's camera. Yep. Okay.
So if you're using your mobile phone, basically it's just a camera, right? And so you have it. Is going back to what Kyle had mentioned quite a while ago regarding a URL? Is there like a dedicated URL that's so Kyle, question or Simeon. So you capture it with your phone camera. How do you get it up into the workspace?
If I
can actually speak to the
ahead,
mobile
Kyle.
experience. Yeah, so the mobile experience is very different also depending on which mobile you're on, Android or iOS. But I would recommend, once you've got the free trial, to go through and take a look at it, because it is different in its structure and the way it's used. I'm actually very proud of it. I've compared it to quite a few of our competitors' mobile platforms, and I'm very proud of it. But it isn't exactly the same as what you see here. Here, all the features are available to me. I can see the video as well as the whiteboard at the same time, whereas that's only available on certain video platforms, video layout modes within the phone. So definitely go check it out.
Well, let me clarify the use case. So back to what Simeon was saying, students are using a laptop computers, most will, or iPad, whatever. But they're just using their camera because it's convenient, right? It's in their hand. They can snapshot their homework that they're working on, and then they want to upload it into the workspace that they're using on their computer. What would be the mechanism?
That's a tough one. Short of if I am the student and I'm actually going to use my phone, and my hope is that I will be using a computer. I just happen to do Apple altogether. So I would take a picture of that document, Chris, and then I would AirPlay it or shoot it over to my computer. It would automatically land on my desktop, and then I drag it right onto my space. I actually did that with a student. A student did that with one of their math assignments. I was tutoring in algebra. They just took a picture with their phone. They took a picture of their textbook, drag, and then, whatever you call it, AirPlay, AirShot, whatever, to their desktop.
Email is possible as well.
Yeah.
Well, so Simeon, the scenario that speaks to one specific ecosystem or environment, and then of course other people are using Android and whatnot.
Yep.
So Kyle, did you say that there's like okay, so that's in the general, because this is where the rubber is going to meet the road for everybody. Bottom line is, so if somebody's got a homework assignment to share, certainly they could hold it up, to their camera, trial and error, on their laptop, and try to screenshot it, show it. But I'm just, what would be the preferred sort of option A, option B mechanisms whereby somebody would share an image like that, and then so that the tutor can view it?
If I may, just thinking of a quick workaround from our side, there is one sort of, I wouldn't say controversial, what's the term for, just a bit out of the box, and that would just for the students to then join the space on their mobile phone. As soon as they join, it's very important that they turn off their volume, their microphone, and their camera. They can stay on, but their volume and the microphone to avoid the feedback loop. But the student could just join the space twice, use the camera on the phone, take the picture, transfer the picture from the phone to the space. Sorry, from the phone to the space on their phone, and it'll be available. They can share it in chat. They can drop it onto the whiteboard.
Yeah. It would be super useful also maybe to have like a QR code or something like that they could just snap from their phone. Bang, it takes them right to their session space, and then they can, snap a picture or something right there. I'm not looking for a use case where somebody's trying to actually run an entire tutoring session on their mobile phone or anything.
Right.
I think that's kind of silly. So
Yeah.
So that QR code can be generated with Google's QR generator. So you just take the link for the space, chuck it in Google's QR generator, it'll generate the code for you. Quite simply, you could load that QR code into the space then.
Just put it right in the space. Yeah. Okay.
So a couple of things. My hope, number one, because we're right at the top, 10 minutes past, our hope was that this stimulated some interest in terms of how, again, just bring in another solution. Because again, I think there was at one point when Zoom did whatever it did. I mean, the world was just, the world within Tutor Doctor was kind of going ballistic. Do we have another solution? Do we have another solution? And nobody was responding. And this was a solution that was kind of brewing. And then the timing just seemed to be ripe. So again, everybody's use case is going to be different. It's not going to answer the questions for every single person, but hopefully you found something within it that says, man, for my use case, you might be the one shop that only does one online tutoring session once a week because you only got one tutor and student doing online. Everybody else is, again, there's a solution for you within Lessonspace. Hopefully you saw some of the key advantages, again, from a teaching and learning standpoint, in terms of differences between utilizing Lessonspace versus Microsoft Teams, Google Meet, et cetera, et cetera. I would challenge you again, and hopefully you guys don't mind me saying this. I think I share it all the time. I'm an educator by trade, not necessarily, I'm still getting a hold of this business thing. Let one of your tutors or teachers try this thing out, give it to them for that 14-day trial or what have you. You might find from the teacher perspective, the ones who are teachers, where they can actually give you some differences like, oh yeah, I can tell you now, for many of my tutors, they have dropped Zoom in a heartbeat. They've dropped it. They've canceled their subscriptions and they said, this is way better. Again, everybody is different. So again, Kyle, I'm sure you're going to provide your information in terms of how folks can get in touch with you for those that want to get started. And again, for those of you that are IATDF members, if you guys want to give this a go, certainly after you've done your 14-day trial, I think, kudos to Lessonspace. I didn't think you guys were going to do that. Kudos for the 14-day free trial or what have you. For those of you that want to get involved, who want to utilize it, reach out to James, myself, Jessica will give you the coupon code for that so that your discount is automatically applied. And for those, I see some questions about, hey, how do I join IATDF? Again, sync up with James. Again, hopefully you guys are finding value with what IATDF brings to the table. We're just trying to help us become better and better at our business. Thanks, James, so much for the platform. Thanks for the space. Kyle, how do folks get in touch with you if they want to learn more, if they want to talk a little bit more about their use cases, et cetera?
Absolutely. So once you've created the trial, you'll get about 3 automatic mails from my email address. You can just respond to those. But I've also just shared my email address in chat now as well, so you can contact me there.
James.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Kyle, for this information. I just want to double click real quick on the reason we're all together. Take out IATDF member or not, but we all joined a franchise because we wanted a franchisee community, right? All of us are researching solutions that help our business. And if we were out on an island ourselves, we would have to find our own marketing, our own platforms, our own vendors, our own everything. And a lot of us have been operating like that for years. That's why the association makes sense, is because it gives us a platform with monthly meetings, with WhatsApp chat groups, with Facebook groups that allows all of you who are doing your own individual research and vendor partnerships to bring that to the rest of us. I know I highlighted this last month, but I want to just double click on a couple of them. Kimberly Selchin has talked a couple of times on the evaluation she's doing on vendors and how she's pushing that information. Sandy Tutwiler has mentioned about how she has held vendors, specifically Scorpion, one of them, accountable to milestones and metrics. Larry Goose-Ferris brought us the PPC Stagmatics program that he was a pilot of that brought it in. Chris Lean is always researching SAT or new test prep or new options that are out there and always putting that information, that research out there for us to investigate. Linda Langhoff is doing a lot in the marketing space. You know, tap into that if you need help with marketing. Jen Rosier has, I mean, I don't know if exam prep queen is an appropriate title for her to wear, but how many of you have tapped into her for exam prep or questions about it? And then I can't say enough about Simeon. I mean, the way he's impacted my business. I mean, I've told this to him. I'm mad at him for not bringing some of these solutions to us sooner. He's been using Mindprint for a year and a half. He's been using Lessonspace for a while of bringing that to us. The Let's Go Learn connections he's making, all of the effort that he and all of the rest of you are making to bring that to us as a network is how we all get stronger with one voice and get stronger together. So stay tuned on membership. We're looking at changing how membership in the association works, but we want your voice to participate in these at least monthly calls. Kyle gave us some great information. Compare this to Bramble, compare this to Zoom, compare this to Google, whatever, but you got 14 days to try it. And Kyle, would I be correct in saying if we don't activate that 14 trial now because we may be in summer, we can activate that a little closer to our school year? You're good with that?
Please create it now. If your trial runs out, just pop me a mail. I'm happy to extend that for you and give you as much time as you need.
I love it. Thank you very much. So awesome job, everybody. We will get a copy of this on the recording on our YouTube channel. If you're not connected to the IETDF YouTube channel, links are in every newsletter that goes out. We'll get those links out on Facebook. But thank you, everybody. Appreciate your time. Happy Friday. With that being said, I think there's a lot of positive comments. Nothing we need to re-click there, but we're good. Thank you.
Hey, y'all. Facebook, go talk it up. Let folks know, you know, not necessarily an IETDF thing, but let folks know what they missed. I think the more that we communicate and collaborate through social channels to the greatest degree of our ability, the more we can start getting folks kind of engaged, if you will. So do me a favor, go into the social channel and just say, hey, folks, man, you should have, whatever your feelings were about Lessonspace, you know, whatever, just whatever. And certainly talk up the value that you're seeing with IETDF, just whatever you can share in the Z only page, you know, or wherever you choose to share it, just go for it, guys.
Awesome. Thank you. And I just one last point. Facebook started as the Facebook. Look at Lessonspace, the Lessonspace. They're taking off. Get on board. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it. Have a great weekend.
Thank you, Kyle. Thank you.